Okay, as we continue our exploration of angles, we are going to be looking at estimating angle size. This is a really crucial skill because you may be given diagrams and you kind of have to have a rough idea of if your answer seems sensible. So sometimes students are not very good at estimating angles. This video will help you improve that. So let's get started. All you have to do for the following questions is decide, is it an acute angle from what's drawn here? So true or false. So I can see the first question is very small. It's definitely less than 90. So this is definitely an acute angle. How about this one? Is this an acute angle? Well, 90 degrees is a right angle. So, and an acute angle has to be less than 90 degrees. So that's not an acute angle. Decide if the following three are acute angles and give reasons why. Pause the video if you need more time. So the question 3, I can see it's less than 90, so yes, this is acute. This one here, although this angle here is acute, we're looking at the reflex angle, so this is definitely not acute because it's going to be more than 190. In this case, yeah, reflex. And then the last question here, I can see that if it was a right angle, it would kind of be going straight on there, so it's actually bigger than a right angle, so this would be a obtuse angle. So no, this is not a acute angle, it's an obtuse angle. Okay, let's try a few more examples here. Decide if all of these are reflex angles. Pause the video, have a go first and give reasons why, and then I'm going to explain. So here come the answers. So question 1, I can see that's just a straight line, it's 180, so it's a straight angle. So in this case, nope, it's not reflex. This one here, I can see that's a 90 degree angle, it looks like a 90 degree angle, and the other angle we're looking at is 270, so that would be considered a reflex angle. This one here is less than 90, so it's not reflex. This one here is greater than 270, so it is reflex. This one is more than 90, but it's not more than 180, because if it was 180, it would go down maybe beyond. So in this case, we can say no, although it's more than 90, it's less than 180, so this is obtuse, not reflex. Okay, so we'll look at some more examples. Decide if the following are obtuse. Okay, so you can see from the previous page, we've kind of discussed a lot of these already. So this is not obtuse, that's a straight angle. This is a right angle. This is an acute angle. This is a reflex angle. This is the only obtuse angle that we have. Okay, so we're going to be drawing angles now, just sketching them out. You would not generally be given squared paper if this was an exam. Constructions is something that you will look at later, but for now, you're going to be allowed to use squared paper. And what I want you to do is just draw two lines that cross over, just like this, and then there's your right angle there. When you have that, we're going to be looking at some examples of how we can use these right angles to help us estimate other sizes. Okay, so the 90 degree angle is relatively straightforward to draw, and you're going to see why this is useful. If I asked you to draw a 45 degree angle, how would you do that? Think about what the relationship is between 45 and 90. So you may have spotted that it's going to be half. So what we want to do is, if we're going to draw a 45 degree angle without a protractor, it's going to go halfway down. So that's how I would draw it. I think I'm quite happy with that generally. So we can see that this is just a sketch, but we can see the 45 degree angle is just going to be splitting that 90 degree angle in two. So we're going to bisect it. Okay, a 30 degree angle. Well, if you know that this is 90 and that's 45, a 30 degree angle is going to be somewhere just a bit less than that. So a 30 degree angle, this might be your rough sketch. Now, if you're asked to sketch angles, this type of approach is generally quite useful. You don't need to draw all the lines here, but once you have your right angle, you know, well, 45 is going to be there, so 30 degrees will be somewhere like that. So we can say approximately 45 degrees, and this one is approximately 30 degrees. So using a bit of common sense here as well. So if I asked you to draw a 60-degree angle, well, we know we can draw a 90-degree angle here, and then we know that 45 is going to be halfway, 60 is going to be on the other end. Now, if we're measuring from here, that's going to be 45 degrees. 60 degrees will be somewhere up here. So you may not need to draw all of this out, but roughly as a sketch, maybe a 60-degree angle might look like that. And just to kind of show you how accurate that might be, I'm going to get a protractor. I can see it's roughly accurate. So this type of sketching is going to be quite important, and we'll look at how to use a protractor later. Now, this is going to be one-sided because it's a video, so I'm not going to be able to check your work, but if you could have a go at sketching these angles out, start from drawing a 90-degree angle and then sketch what these angles might look like. Pause the video, have a go, and then I'm going to show you some examples of these questions. Okay, so the 15-degree angle is going to be somewhere like that, so approximately 15 degrees. The 105-degree, well, if I know that this is 90, 105 is going to be a bit more than that. So my angle is going to look like this. So there's my vertex, these are my two arms. That's too much. So I'm just going to be somewhere like that. I'm using a computer, so this is not going to be super accurate. 120 degrees, well, I know that this is going to be 90, and then I'm adding on about 120, so it's going to roughly perhaps look like that, just a bit more, so approximately 120 degrees. We've got 150 degrees, so 150, that's going to be around about, so roughly around here. Another way to think of it is if we were to draw this line all the way across, I know that to make a straight angle, that would have to be around 30 degrees. So I can kind of imagine this bit on the bottom and then think, okay, that's going to be 150. And then for 135, it's going to be in between 150 and 120. So it's going to roughly look something like that, or maybe slightly more. So these are just sketches of these angles, but it gives you a rough idea. Now, normally you do this in person with tracing paper, but since this is a video, you would have been given these two angles that you would have just been able to place on top of these, and what you would have done is worked out an estimate for the size of each of these angles. So if with using just these two props, can you work out an estimate of these angles? Now, you're not going to be able to do this in a video, so I'm just going to help you out here. So if I know that this is 45 degrees, I would say roughly that's about in between, it's about halfway. So I'm going to say that this is approximately 22 degrees. Now the next one, I'm going to have to rotate this and see how does it compare. Well, it's almost 60, but not quite. So I think a sensible estimate here would be 50 degrees. The next one, question 3, let's just turn this around and see how similar it is to 60 degrees. Is it the same as 60? Well, it's very slightly more, but not by much. So I would guess that this is about 65 degrees. The next one, we can see, let's use this 45 to help us out here. Now, I kind of feel like that is quite close to 90. So I'm going to say, but it's not quite 90. So let's say that this is slightly less I'm going to say 89 or 87-ish degrees. The next one, 45, 40. Now I'm going to say, now we know it's more than 90. One way to think of it is if it was a straight line, then these would add up to 180. So if you do 180 take away 45, that's going to give you 135. But this is very slightly smaller than that, so I'm going to say maybe 130-ish. Okay, next one. We can see here it's more than 90. How much more would you need to make up? I'm going to say 135. This one here is almost 180, but not quite. You can see it's not quite straight. So I'm going to say this is going to be 175 degrees approximately. This one here, let's see what we think it could be. So 180 take away less than 60, maybe that could be 50. 180, that's going to be about 130 perhaps. Question 9. Can you work out the missing angle here? Let's see. Slightly more than 45. I'm going to say 50 degrees. And then question 10, final question. This one is work out what you need to get to 180. That one doesn't work very well. Does this one work? So 180 take away about 40-ish. So I'm going to say 140. Okay, so you will have had your own guesses here. I'm going to just show you some answers to see what the correct answer is. So we've just used 45 and 60 degree angles to help us guess the approximate value of these angles. The correct answers are on here. Now I did this on a computer, so it's a bit harder. It could actually just be just an excuse from me, to be honest. Right, there's the answer. So 30, 45, 70 were question 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 you get 85, 120, 100, and then the last few questions you would have got 170, 135, 63, and 148. Right. When estimating angles, you just need to have a good feel for how big or how small an angle is, and you should usually start with a 90-degree angle. And then use that as a kind of starting point to decide, is it bigger, smaller, what fraction is it, has it been split in two, is it 45, is it less than 45, and so on. So true or false, is this a good estimate? Is it a sensible estimate? Would you say this being 50 degrees is a sensible estimate? I would say it's somewhat reasonable. I would estimate it to be a bit bigger than that, perhaps 60, but either way, I know it's more than 45, so I would say yes. For this one, would you say it's a sensible estimate? I would say definitely not, because you can see if it was a right angle up there, then that would be 90, and obviously this angle is more than 90 degrees, so this is not a sensible estimate. Would you say this is a sensible estimate, 91? Well, this is kind of the opposite of that. We can see that if it was a right angle, then I think it would have just gone slightly more. The turn would have been a bit bigger. So this has to be less than 90. So this is not a good estimate. And then we'll look at the last example here. Is that a good estimate? I would say 150. It's less than 180, not too far off from there. So I'm going to say yes-ish. It's sensible enough. Okay, we're going to continue looking at angles in the next video. See you there.